A single, piercing train whistle cuts through the freezing dawn of 1874 in Red Bluff, Wyoming Territory. Clara Whitlock, a 27-year-old nurse who fled Boston's gilded cage for the raw promise of the frontier, stands on the platform with bruised wrists and a battered valise. She is about to board the eastbound train, leaving behind a town that punished her for speaking the truth about a deadly mine explosion. Then, a rough hand gently stops her. It belongs to Tawakoni, a Comanche warrior no one in town trusts, who whispers words that shatter her resolve. You leave. The truth leaves with you. What price will they both pay for refusing to stay silent? This is a story of courage, hidden wounds, and a choice that changes everything. One that has left millions in tears at its quiet, unforgettable ending. If you're ready for a frontier tale unlike any you've heard, stay until the last moment. Hit subscribe, share where you're watching from, and let's find out together whether truth can survive where silence is the only law. The train whistle sliced through the icy dawn like a knife through rawhide, long and mournful, echoing off the frozen hills surrounding Red Bluff, Wyoming Territory. Late autumn 1874 had turned vicious overnight, frost glittering on the wooden platform under Clara Whitlock's boots. She stood alone, 27 years old, clutching a scarred wooden valise that had crossed half a continent with her. Her breath came in white clouds, wrists shadowed with fading bruises from gripping dying men 3 months earlier. Those marks lingered like the memory of the mine explosion that caused them. Clara had fled Boston chasing purpose, escaped from drawing rooms where women poured tea, smiled on cue, and buried their questions. The mining camp needed a nurse, the notice promised. She believed the frontier valued healers over ornaments. Reality hit harder than mountain wind. After the blast killed 4 men, her precise medical log, unrepaired ventilation shafts, ignored gas warnings, made her the enemy. Patients vanished overnight. The boarding house owner returned her rent and changed the lock. Midnight rocks shattered her window, wrapped in a note. Go back east if you know what's good for you. Now the eastbound train waited, steam hissing impatiently, offering return to disappointed parents and the former fiancé who'd smirked at her foolish notions. Clara checked her reticule, barely enough for the ticket and 1 stale meal in Cheyenne. She lifted the valise, stepped forward, boot on the iron step, gloved hand on the cold rail. A rough hand closed around her wrist, calloused, warm against the freeze, carrying scents of wood smoke and sage. "Miss, wait." The voice was low, deliberate, English forged in places far from Boston schools. Clara turned sharply, primed to rebuke the stranger, and met eyes dark as midnight. He was tall, lean as rawhide, long black hair braided against the wind. Buckskin over wool, no hat, no gun, just Tawakoni, the Comanche who traded pelts on town's edge for salt, coffee, medicine. Red Bluff treated him like smoke, visible but ignored. To Clara, he was the silent helper who'd carried wounded miners when others turned away. "Sir, release me. The train departs." He loosened, but didn't let go entirely. "I know, but you go. Truth goes with you." The words struck like a spur. Clara searched his scarred face, urgency burning in his gaze. "That night," he said carefully, "I work below, illegal, land taken long ago. Need survive. See bosses send men down. Air poison. They know. I see. Say nothing." His jaw clenched. Silence chased me every night. Clara felt the ground shift. She remembered her own careful silence, treating wounds, logging facts no one read, then packing to flee. The conductor bellowed, "All aboard!" Doors slammed. Tawakoni's fingers eased. He wasn't forcing, he was asking. Clara glanced at the open car door, warm light spilling out, promising forgetting. Then at the town, chimneys smoking, men trudging toward shafts where gas waited. She stepped down. The valise hit the platform with a thud. Tawakoni released her fully, but the warmth stayed. The train lurched, wheels screeching, vanishing into white distance with her ticket and old life. Clara stood in the hush, frost crunching underfoot, decision settling heavy in her chest. Not victory, just the sharp knowledge that leaving would cost her soul. Tawakoni lifted her valise. Cold worse soon. My camp burned last night. Town not safe now. Clara met his eyes. It never was. They walked off the platform together, two figures against the vast freeze, carrying truth like a sharp blade, dangerous, essential, impossible to drop once drawn. The frost clung harder in the days that followed, turning Red Bluff into a place where breath froze before words could escape. Clara walked the back trails now, avoiding the main street where stairs cut sharper than the wind, and the weight of her choice pressed heavier with every step. Word spread fast in a town built on whispers and fear. By noon the next day, the saloon door swung for Tawakoni one last time, then slammed shut forever. The barkeep waved him off with a shotgun across the counter, voice booming for all to hear. "No more trade here, Injun. Take your pelts elsewhere. We don't serve your kind." That night, flames licked the sky down by the frozen river. Tawakoni's brush shelter burned bright and hot, sparks riding the cold air like angry fireflies scattering warnings. He stood watching from the shadows across the bank, face unreadable, rifle in hand, until the last timber collapsed into glowing embers. Clara found him at dawn, packing what little the fire had spared: a scorched blanket roll, his old rifle, a pouch of jerked meat and pemmican. Smoke still rose thin from the ruins. "They'll come for you next if you stay close," she said, voice steady despite the chill gnawing her bones. He shrugged, tying his bundle. "They come anyway. Always have." She didn't waste breath arguing. Instead, she turned her hands to the work no one else would touch. The outcasts found her door after dark. First came Lee, a Chinese miner with a splintered forearm from an unreported fall deep in the shaft. He slipped in, hooded, pain twisting his features. Clara set the bone by flickering lantern light, splinting it with scavenged wood, biting down on her own surge of memory. The explosion's roar, men's gasps underground. Word traveled underground, like the gas they ignored. A widow named Mary Kane knocked weeks later, fever raging after a stillbirth. The company doctor refused to attend. Clara cleaned the deep infection. Brewed bitter willow bark tea sat through the woman's delirium, changing poultices until the crisis broke at dawn. Then a Comanche boy, barely 10, limped in one bitter evening. Calf gashed raw by a steel trap set for coyotes on contested range. Blood soaked his legging. Tawakoni translated the child's clipped words, while Clara cleaned, stitched, and bandaged, her needle sure in the firelight. Each patient left quieter than they arrived, slipping back into shadows, carrying secrets and unspoken debts. The town pushed back vicious. Notices nailed to the general store board warned, any man seen dealing with the meddling nurse or the red-skinned troublemaker risked his job, his claim, his place. Supplies vanished overnight: bandages, laudanum, carbolic acid, even basic soap. Clara rationed fiercely, boiling instruments in river water hauled bucket by bucket, reusing cloth until it frayed to threads, stitching wounds with fishing line when thread ran out. Nights stretched long and sharp. She sat by her small stove fire, journal open on her lap, logging cases no official ledger would ever hold. Names, symptoms, causes the company denied. Tawakoni often joined her without a word, sharpening his knife or arrows in steady rhythm, the scrape of stone on steel, the only break in silence. One evening, as heavy snow threatened the peaks. A knock came sharp and impatient. Harlan Graves, the town boss who owned half the claims and influenced the rest, stood bundled in bearskin, hat clutched in gloved hands, a rare humility for a man used to doors opening wide. He stepped inside without invitation, eyes flicking to Tawakoni in the corner. "We need to talk plain, Miss Whitlock." Clara didn't offer a seat. "Then talk." Graves kept his voice low. "You know how this town breathes. One mine, one rich vein keeping us alive. Federal men come sniffing over your reports. That vein shuts down. Every family starves by spring. No payroll, no stores, no nothing." He leaned in, breath fogging. "Owners cut corners, I'll grant you. Men take risks for wages. But you stir this, expose it all. Red Bluff dies slow and ugly." Clara met his stare cold. 4 men already died ugly. More will follow if shafts stay poisoned. "That's the price of progress out here," he shot back. "Drop it. Pack quiet. I'll buy your eastbound ticket myself. First class if it keeps peace." Silence hung thick as the smoke outside. Graves pressed harder. "Think on it hard. Truth don't fill empty bellies, or bury the dead it creates." He left abrupt, boots crunching away into gathering dark, leaving the door ajar long enough for snowflakes to drift in. Tawakoni spoke first, voice flat. He offers silence, wrapped in gold and fear. Clara stared at the dying stove coals. Boston flashed again. Safe parlors, predictable scorn, questions forever unasked and unanswered. Here, every choice drew blood. But the hidden patients lined up in her mind like silent accusers. Lee's broken arm, Mary's fevered fight, the boy's gashed leg. She snapped her journal shut. Silence has its price, too, and we've already started paying. Outside, snow began falling thick and relentless, burying old tracks, muffling the world, setting the stage for the deeper fight neither could now avoid. The first heavy snow of winter hit Red Bluff like a hammer on anvil, blanketing the town in white silence that muffled everything but the distant thud of mine pumps working day and night. Weeks bled into one another, supplies dwindled further, and the hidden patients came less often, fear finally outweighing pain. Clara kept her stove burning low, rationing coal scraped from abandoned slag heaps, while Tawakoni ranged farther for game, bringing back lean rabbits and the occasional deer to stretch their meager stores. Tension coiled tighter in the town. Men drank harder, arguments flared over dwindling wages, and whispers blamed the trouble nurse and the engine agitator for every delayed payout. Then, one iron-gray morning in early December, the ground shuddered. A low rumble rolled up from the depths like thunder trapped underground. Dust plumed from the main shaft headframe, thick and black against the snow. The alarm bell clanged frantic. Another collapse. This one was worse. Word raced through frozen streets. Timbers snapped deep in the new drift. Gas pocket ignited. And worst of all, children. Boys as young as 10. Hired cheap to push ore carts in narrow tunnels adults couldn't reach. Trapped with the men. Clara grabbed her medical kit and ran toward the chaos, boots slipping on ice. Tawakoni overtook her halfway, face grim. Bad air. Need no way through old workings. At the pithead, panic reigned. Women screamed names into the dark. Foremen barked useless orders. Lanterns swung wild. Rescue cages dangled empty. Cable snarled from the jolt. No one dared descend blind into poison gas and falling rock. Clara pushed through the crowd. "I can go down. I treated the last blast. No signs of bad air." Laughter, bitter and short, answered her. "Woman in the hole? You'd faint before you reached level 3. Tawakoni stepped forward, voice cutting clean. "I know back ways. Worked them nights. Can guide." The shift boss spat. "Send an engine and a nosy nurse? Might as well bury him now. But time bled out with every second. A foreman, face soot-streaked and desperate, finally nodded. Gear 'em quick. If they die, it's on their own heads. They lowered on a makeshift sling, Clara first, then Tawakoni, into choking darkness lit only by their Davy lamps. Dust hung thick as fog, beams groaned overhead. The air tasted metallic, foul with afterdamp. Tawakoni led unerring, tracing forgotten crosscuts he'd mapped in secret months ago. They found the cave-in, a wall of shattered timber and rock blocking the drift, faint cries seeping through. Clara clawed at loose stone, while Tawakoni levered larger chunks with the stolen pry bar. Voices grew clearer, men gasping, a child's high sob. They broke through a narrow gap. First out, 2 miners, lungs heaving, faces black. Clara checked pulses, dragged them clear. Then a boy, ribs crushed, barely breathing. She splinted quick with broken timber, morphine from her kit easing his whimpers. More followed. Tawakoni hauled a trapped man whose leg pinned under a fallen beam, muscles straining until something tore in his own thigh. He didn't stop. Last came the hardest choice. 2 voices behind a secondary fall. 1 adult miner pinned solid. 1 child reachable through a crawl space too tight for rescue gear. Time for 1. Tawakoni locked eyes with Clara across the rubble. She nodded once. He wriggled through, pulled the boy free. Skinny, terrified, but alive. The miners' pleas echoed behind as they retreated, roof groaning fresh warnings. They surfaced to blinding white daylight and stunned silence. Rescuers hauled up 9 survivors. 1 man died in Clara's arms on the cage right up, blood bubbling from crushed lungs. The trapped miner never emerged. Roof sealed his grave. Crowds parted as they staggered out, covered in coal dust and failure's weight. No cheers. Only stares. Some grateful. Most accusing. That night, federal telegrams flew east. An inspector was coming, summoned by the double disaster no local authority could bury. Clara sat exhausted by her stove, hands still trembling from futile compressions. Tawakoni bound his torn leg in silence, pain etching deeper lines. She spoke first. "We saved some." He nodded slow. "But not enough. And now they come for us harder." Outside, wind howled through fresh snow, carrying word that the fight had only begun. If stories like this, raw, unflinching glimpses into lives most history books ignore, move you the way they move me, do me a favor. Hit subscribe. It helps these voices reach further, keeps the channel alive so we can keep telling the truths the frontier tried to silence. Thank you. The inspector's boots crunched fresh snow as he stepped off the stage from Cheyenne in mid-January. Coat dusted white, face set like granite. Federal badge glinted under his lapel. Rare sight in Red Bluff, where company law usually reigned supreme over any distant government whim. Word had preceded him swift as winter wind. Elias Crane, mining engineer turned federal enforcer, dispatched to probe the double collapses that no local sheriff dared touch. The town fractured clean overnight, half praying for justice, half dreading the starvation it might bring. Crane moved fast, no pleasantries wasted. He commandeered the assay office, cleared scales and crucibles to the corners, arranged rough chairs in a circle under swinging lanterns that threw long shadows across tense faces. Company foremen and owners packed one side, arms folded tight, jaws working tobacco in silent threat. Clara walked in first, medical kit slung heavy, exhaustion carving hollows beneath her eyes, but spine straight as rifle barrel. She spread her remaining journals on the scarred table, pages crammed with precise entries, dates of ignored gas warnings, child laborers listed by approximate age, symptoms matching unrepaired ventilation. Crane flipped through methodical, spectacles flashing lantern light, brow creasing deeper with every damning line. His questions came pointed, exact shaft depths, shift rotation logs, maintenance orders the company suddenly couldn't locate. Answers from the owners slid greasy. Deep mining's always chancy. Men sign on knowing. Clara cut in flat. They sign knowing wages, not knowing corners cut on air pipes and timbers. Hostile murmurs swelled. One burly superintendent sneered loud. What does a woman know about engineering? Her place ain't deciding men's work. Crane raised a hand for silence, but the seed of doubt took root in his measured pause. Then, Tawakoni entered slow, leaning on a crutch whittled from pine branch, limp pronounced from the leg wound that refused proper healing in the cold. The room froze colder than outside. A Comanche bearing witness under white man's roof. Something boarders rarely saw without blood first. He stood tall despite pain, voice even and deliberate. He detailed nights spent in forbidden drifts, routes memorized by touch and lantern glow. Foremen waving crews past known dangers for quotas. He described the cries in the second collapse. Children's voices, thin through rubble. The brutal arithmetic of who could be reached and who could not. No bitterness laced his words, no appeal for sympathy. Just truth, stripped raw as fresh, flayed hide. Company lawyers struck immediate. Testimony from an illegal hand? Clear grudge. He's no citizen. Words worth less than dirt. Crane scribbled, face masked, but hesitation showed in the slow scratch of pen. Retaliation hit hard and fast outside the hearing. That same night, flames roared up from Clara's makeshift clinic shed, torched clean, consuming irreplaceable bandages, ether bottles, the few instruments she'd salvaged. She ran toward the blaze, but arrived only to feel scorching heat drive her back as the roof caved in showers of sparks. Tawakoni suffered worse hours later. 4 masked riders ambushed him on a moonlit trail, clubs cracking ribs, boots stomping the bad leg until bone grated anew. He drew knife and fought savage. One attacker sliced deep across forearm, but weight of numbers dropped him bleeding into snow. Rifle stock splintered. Final warning growled, "Speak again and die." Clara tracked blood sign at first light, hauled him back on improvised travois, stitched gashes by dwindling candle, reset splints while he gripped rawhide between teeth. Silent. The siege tightened. Merchants refused service outright. No salt, no coal, no cartridges. Anonymous notes nailed to posts promised worse. Crane postponed his preliminary findings twice, citing need for additional verification, avoiding direct gaze when crossing paths. Town hall meetings erupted violent, men bellowing that federal closure meant empty tables, evicted families, children hungry by spring. Blame fixed unanimous on the meddling nurse and savage agitator dragging decent folk to ruin. Clara's last coins rattled lonely in a tin cup. Tawakoni's snares came up empty, game driven off by constant patrols. They sliced pemmican paper thin, drank snowmelt, nursed fire with furniture scraps. One raw evening, Crane slipped in unannounced, collar turned high against wind. "Your evidence stacks solid," he admitted quiet, voice barely above stove crackle. "But wires from owners reach high. Congress seats, railroad investments, votes in '76. My report could vanish on a desk in Washington." Clara's reply came ice sharp. "More collapses won't vanish. More graves will." He rubbed gloved hands, conflicted. "Maybe. But if mine shutter's permanent, this town starves certain. Progress demands price." He departed without commitment, footsteps swallowed by howling blizzard. Defeat pressed crushing as avalanche overburden. Even survivors pulled from rubble now crossed streets to avoid them, gratitude buried under survival fear. No patients dared knock. Isolation absolute. Tawakoni gazed into guttering embers late one night, pain etching face older. We lay truth bare. They shoveled dirt faster. Clara rebound his seeping bandages, hands sure despite hollow ache inside. Dirt shifts eventually. Question is what stands when it settles. Yet as storm winds battered thin walls and snow piled against doors, darkness felt victorious, swallowing every flicker they'd kindled, leaving only cold wait for the final blow. Spring thaw came slow to Red Bluff in 1875, snow melting into muddy ruts that sucked at boots and wagon wheels alike. Elias Crane's final report, mailed east under pressure but not fully buried, landed on a Washington desk long enough to trigger action. The mine shut temporary for 6 months. Federal order. No appeals. The town split like cracked timber. Some families packed wagons overnight, heading for Colorado strikes or rail work in Cheyenne. Others stayed, scraping by on odd jobs, hunting lean winter range, blaming Clara and Tawakoni for every empty cupboard. Company men rode out fast, leaving debts and ghost payrolls. The main street quieted, saloon half empty, stores boarding windows, head frames silent against bruised sky. Clara and Tawakoni moved farther out, claiming a squat patch near old Comanche water. Spring-fed creek cutting through cottonwood grove on land. No one bothered filing yet. They built rough. Log cabin chinked with mud and moss, lean-to for tools, small corral from split rails. Tawakoni's leg healed crooked, limp permanent, but he broke ground stubborn, plowing shallow furrows with borrowed mule, planting corn and beans saved from better days. He ran snares again, traded discreet pelts miles downriver, where faces didn't know Red Bluff's grudge. Clara scavenged burned clinic ruins for salvageable iron, needles bent straight over fire, bottles washed clean. Word trickled slow. Outcasts still needed tending. A Chinese camp cook arrived first with festering tooth. Then a half-breed trapper shot accidental in thigh. The clinic reborn smaller, single-room attached cabin, shelves from crate wood, herbs drying from rafters. Patients paid what they could. Venison haunch, mended boots, labor splitting firewood. Months ground on. Mine reopened cautious under new federal rules. Better timbering, ventilation checks, no boys underground. Wages lower, crews thinner, but collapses stopped. Some men nodded grudging when passing Clara on trail, eyes averted, but no spit followed. Tawakoni found work sporadic, branding for distant ranches needing extra hands who asked no questions. He rode out dawn, returned dusk, sharing fire silent, carving new arrows while stew simmered. One raw April dusk, a wagon creaked up. Young woman from town, belly swollen late term, husband dead in final shift before shutdown. Labor hit hard and wrong. Clara worked through night. Hot water, clean linen scavenged. Tawakoni boiling instruments outside, holding lanterns steady when screams peaked. Baby came breech, but breathing. Girl, strong cry cutting storm wind. Mother wept exhausted relief. They named child hope, half joke against hard times. Word spread wider. More wagons detoured, broken bones from spring plowing, infections from dirty water, birthing complications where company doctor fled. Clara trained 2 women quiet. Widow Mary Kane learning poultices, young Chinese bride mixing salves. Clinic grew organic, extra room added from scavenged lumber, garden expanding from medicinal plants. Tawakoni raised small herd, mustangs caught wild, broken gentle for trade. Foals born healthy, signaled roots deepening, years folded quiet. Red Bluff shrank but endured, new vein tapped careful, town learning slower greed. Strangers passed through, hearing fragments. Nurse and Comanche who forced change, paid heavy, stayed anyway. One crisp autumn morning, 1876, Clara stood again on the old platform. Rails rusted now, trains rarer. A young woman waited eastbound, valise clutched tight, face bruised faint, eyes defeated like Clara's once. Snow-dusted wind whipped skirts. Clara watched from distance, hands pocketed. Tawakoni beside silent on crutch, turned walking staff. The whistle blew distant approach. Young woman stepped forward. Clara didn't move closer. No hand reached out. She knew force changed nothing. Choice alone endured. Train slowed, brake screeching. Woman boarded swift, door slamming final. As cars pulled away, smoke trailing east, Clara turned to Tawakoni. She goes. Maybe finds better silence. He nodded slow. Or carries truth farther. They walked back trail together. Cabin smoke rising ahead, herd lowing soft. Clinic door open for whoever needed next. Not victory. Not forgiveness full. Just continuing. Tending wounds seen and unseen. Raising stock on contested ground. Speaking when required. Silent when wiser. In frontier vast and unforgiving, that endurance carved deepest mark. Not grand justice sweeping clean, but stubborn refusal, break under weight. Clara glanced once more, fading tracks. No one should held by force, but if a hand ever grasped a wrist, gentle, not one's own, but a reminder sharp as a winter blade. If stay, ready pay truth's full price. They disappeared into cottonwoods, footprints filling slow behind. No dramatic end, just the next day waiting, lived deliberate on own terms. That quiet question still echoes across the Wyoming winds. If you stay, are you ready to pay the full price for truth? Clara and Tawakoni didn't chase glory or easy answers. They chose to keep going, tending the wounded, raising a small herd, building a life on the edge where no one else wanted to look. Not a fairy tale ending, but a real one. Stubborn, scarred, and deeply human. What about you? Would you have stepped off that train? Would you have paid the price they did? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every one. Thank you for staying with me until the last word. If this story moved you even a little, hit subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear it. See you in the next tale. Until then, keep asking the hard questions.